5:30.
Mr. Chair, whenever you are ready, sir.
All right. I'll call the Planning Board and Zoning Commission meeting for December 10th to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
DiBenedetto.
Here.
Conley.
Here.
Boise.
Here.
Ecclesdale.
Here.
Tupin.
Here.
Gray.
Here.
Robert.
Here. All right. We've all had a chance to look at the minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes for November 12th, 2025.
I move to approve the minutes of November 12th, 2025.
A second.
Any discussion, corrections? Hearing none, have roll call.
Robert.
Here.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Here for it.
Sorry.
Gray.
Yep.
Tupin.
Yes.
Ecclesdale.
Yes.
Boise.
Yes.
Conley.
Yes.
DiBenedetto.
Yes. All right, next item on the agenda is communications from the board and council, Urban Renewal Agency. We had a joint meeting December 2nd with the Planning Board, Urban Renewal Agency, and Planning Board. And I just thought it'd probably, maybe take about 15 minutes or so to sort of get the board's impression of what the presentation was, but also I think maybe more importantly, get some thoughts from Jeremy and Greg in terms of from what they heard and what approaches or things we need to be thinking about in terms of adjusting zoning within the urban renewal area. Either whether zoning's the way to go or overlay or whatever, I guess, planned unit development or, just to get some thoughts in terms of what kinds of things we need to be thinking about. I guess maybe to start, I'll just kind of turn it over to Jeremy and Greg a little bit to see what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so Jeremy has something personal going on, so he's not on. But,
Okay.
I met with him and talked to him about it, and basically he thought the summary was pretty good, kind of like the report we got. They presented it well, but kind of from what we've taken from our year and a half, almost 2 years with Red Lodge, was some of the ideas didn't necessarily reflect kind of what issues and topics of discussion you guys have presented, like the density and size of the apartments, for example, or the housing complexes were very large, very tall buildings, and they would likely stick out like a sore thumb in Red Lodge. So we had examples we could show you or send along of kind of the size and density they're talking about, just to show kind of a more realistic version. There's some actually right by our Helen office. But other than that, we kind of pictured the area as planned unit development. Like that would be what a developer would probably want to come with for a site to propose. Hey, we're not going to follow everything by the regs per se, but we're going to propose a bunch of things that going to meet the character and intent of Red Lodge. So that was kind of our thought. It's not necessarily you're going to be able to predict what the zoning will be or what they're going to come in with, because it's really developer by developer dependent.
Any thoughts from the board?
I felt that somewhat the same is that it would have been very overdeveloped for our community entrance. I thought some of their ideas were interesting. Developing a park in front of a development like that would be good. I found on any of the retail type of buildings in that area at all. I mean, it'd be one thing if they were office buildings, but having retail on the bottom and housing on the top. We don't want to draw away from the downtown retail, but it would be nice to have some offices and that type of things to serve the businesses in Red Lodge. So that was kind of my thought. And their plans didn't accommodate any kind of snow removal where you're going to store it or what happens when it melts type of thing. So it was interesting. I certainly wouldn't agree to use those ideas in total, but interesting.
Perry?
Well, Sandy and Greg, your points are both well taken, and the URD, I mean, we're not even entertaining it, pretty much most of what Kansas State submitted. That was, it was an academic exercise, and those were concepts. Basically from their approach, it's what could be, not necessarily what would be. And we had a long conversation with them, a couple of long conversations with them about density. And I think that as far as our group, what we're leaning towards recommending is lower density. And I think what we all liked most was the green space along Broadway. We don't want to see a replication of downtown on the entrance as far as a canyon. And so I guess in our minds, and we're pretty unanimous in our feelings, is that we didn't want to see, we want green space along Broadway and a setback for buildings. So, we have kind of an idea, and I think the suggestion was made, and I think we need to follow up on it, is either we need to revise, create a master plan, or go back to the, creating documents for the URD and revise that to fit more of, a lot of it's already there, but more along the lines of where I think we all, including this group, want to see that area become. And you brought up a good point, I think, Sandy, at the end of the meeting. And, this is our challenge here in this group, is right now, that's all just land, and it's all currently zoned the way it's currently zoned. And if somebody came in next month or in 2 or 3 months and said, this is what we want to do, then that kind of really shakes things up. So,
True.
And then a lot, you also notice that there's a lot of the space that KSU was developing is probably not for sale, so.
Yeah,
Nor
not
will it be.
available.
Yeah.
Well, we never know. You don't know.
But you don't know. So, again, it was kind of an exercise to see what could be and not necessarily what will be.
Anybody?
Yeah, I thought that a really fun concept,
Yeah.
conceptually. But I was hoping for more of planning than just concepts, I guess. And then I think that you're right in terms of having the URA or the URD going back through and creating more of a plan with the consideration of when it was initially put into place. I think that's really important to reflect back to, and just kind of a good reminder. And one thing I will say in terms of their planning and their meetings, they were extremely well ran. I don't know who all went to those, but I was really impressed. And I liked the navigating, the Northern Star bit. I'd like to just kind of keep that same imagery and that same mission. Again, always kind of something to reflect back to for that mission critical. And the only other thing that I would ask is, and specifically for planners, as well as the board, is making sure that when we are considering what's going in that space, one, reflecting back to the original intent, when I know a lot of that was workforce housing, but also how do we make that attractive for developers? Because I think a big reason they were pushing for density is for developers' sake and cost. So is there a way that we can make that attractive for the community while also maintaining enough density to make it pencil, because that's, I think, been a big issue with majority of developers that have tried to come to this area. And I mean, I've dealt with it in my line of work where people have come in and they're like, it just doesn't pencil, I can't make profit, I can't make this work based off of zoning. So I think that's something that we really should consider if workforce housing is the objective, is how can we make the density make sense? I'm not recommending, 5-story high-rises, I mean, high-rise for Red Lodge,
It's very
But-
high.
Yeah,
4
5 stories, that's ridiculous. But again, do want to make sure that it's actually something that's considered, because, and I'm not necessarily afraid of putting retail space or restaurants in that district either. Because realistically, I think there's plenty to go around, and end of the day, capitalism will, it's always going to be more attractive to be able to go downtown. And even if it's something where I think that it's beneficial for the high school kids, I think that even just because it's retail doesn't necessarily mean it's tourism-based either. So it's just something to keep in mind when I don't want to limit the breadth of it just because we're trying to protect something. I don't think that's fair or right.
I'm wondering if we should do an overlay for the URD, rather than just have it zoned C3 North. I think it needs to be clearly defined exactly where the URD is. And I still keep leaning towards using the funds to create infrastructure first and foremost.
Yes.
Because that will help the developers as well.
100%.
So I think that infrastructure needs to be kind of first on the list. As years go by, obviously that will drop away.
Yeah, I guess, my perception, I guess, that, number one, I think just need to keep in mind that these are concepts.
Oh, yeah.
So I kind of view them as a starting point,
Mm-hmm.
not something that we're going to strive for, but it gives us a framework in which to have a conversation about what it is actually we want to see, what is the vision for that part of town. And I guess just to kind of, I think we need to have something in place when a developer does come to town. These are kind of the sideboards, and as I look at our R3 zoning, really doesn't give them sufficient sideboards to encompass some of that vision, whether it's, the green space that was talked about or the density and those kinds of things. So I guess a question would be, and I think I've heard it, that some of the TIF funds could also be used for planning.
Mm-hmm.
And so that may be something to sort of think about, how to take these concepts that are kind of the beginning stages, and how do we sort of coalesce them into something that when a developer does come in with a proposal, here's what the vision is, here's the kinds of things that the community thinks is acceptable,
Right.
rather than just leaving it up to the developer to give us his vision, and then we have to react to that. I guess that's just kind of my thoughts and perceptions.
Maybe we haven't been specific enough about what our vision is.
And I think that's hard to do, because, again, our vision isn't necessarily community vision, but I think from what those meetings brought out, there's a lot of consistency. And so I think there's some primary objectives. It's just a matter of laying down the groundwork now and the criteria. And again, that's kind of what I was hoping for from that meeting, was like, hey, this is what you should do if you want to make it look like, if you want to have these things, these are the rules that you need to have in place, and here's your next steps. This is how you should spend those funds. This is year 5, year 10. So I think some sort of master document, like you're saying, that we can essentially provide, that says this is the district, this is the goal, this is the objective, and something that's, one, guiding for us, but as well as guiding for developers.
And it's consistent with what the community's vision is.
Exactly.
As well, I
Yep.
think is important.
Yep.
I guess the other point I'd like to make is that the kind of thing you're talking about, Chelsea, we did sort of pose that to the Kansas City folks, but that level of planning and detail is beyond the scope
Sure.
of the Brownsfield
Okay.
evaluation that they were tasked to do and what they were funded to do.
That tracks.
So those concepts were actually a little bit beyond.
Mhm. Their usual comfort
Yeah.
zone.
So and because one of the things the URA kind of kept talking about is we need to sort of have a vision, we need to have a target in order to what's envisioned for this area, so.
I mean, I say it quite a bit, is Red Lodge is really good at visions. We're not super good at the bridge to how to get to them. Like, and that's where I think a lot of stuff gets lost. And again, that's really what I worry about with the urban renewal district is the process of how you can make it consistent and also fair, throughout, so.
Yeah.
Do you have any other thoughts, Greg?
No, I think that generally covers it.
Okay.
Barry?
So, one of the, and going back to what you said, Jeff, yeah, the scope of their work was not to do any detailed planning. It was more broad brush stroke. But at the community meetings, there were green space and trail network and those types of things were at the, beautification were at the top of the list. But the very bottom of the list was planning. And, the challenge there is people want to see things. They don't want to think about how you get there.
Yeah, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, well, so therein lies the challenge. Is that there's a lot of thought and preparation, planning, and input and feedback that needs to take place before we can get to that.
Yeah.
This is the defined vision for what we're going to do there. And one thing I really appreciated was in the appendices to what they provided, there's a very long list of grantors and opportunities for additional funding that we can seek out.
That's great.
Yeah.
And the other part was there's also a pretty comprehensive list of who to talk to about some of the space, because for it to be further developed, it needs to be cleaned up first.
Yeah, and I think that's the hardest part too, is so much of it's private.
Privately.
Well, it is, and until someone, therein lies the challenge. The developer, I'll just pick on Kroll, their site. There's a lot of cleanup that needs to be developed there, but also what's the market value of that as it sits? It's way different than it would be if it was cleaned up.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge is, who's gonna foot the bill?
Well, the problem is the cleanup is so expensive when you're dealing
Yeah.
with lead and asbestos that by the time you've cleaned it up, you can't charge enough for the land.
Right?
Is that something that we can use TIF funds for?
Yeah.
Cleanup.
So,
Again, that's infrastructure to me.
I think
It's kind of reverse infrastructure.
Just getting rid of it?
Yeah, get rid of the bad stuff, bring in the good.
Well, if there's
Anyway, it was interesting.
Yeah, it was, I really enjoyed that.
All right, there's no other comments or discussion about that, but something to sort of keep in the back of our mind and think about. I think it's probably going to come up when we do get to our talking about C3 North. So, anyway, next on the agenda is City Council update.
City Council is, in terms of land use and planning, we're still working on use of city-owned land process. That's one thing that's high on our agenda there. Otherwise, in terms of planning and land use, there's been a lot of conversation about the Red Lodge, tourism grant that's been going around, as I'm sure everyone at this table is aware of. So it's something that I can expect will come to planning board at some point, that conversation, as well as recommendations from the planning board as well. So just something to keep in your forefront and in your mind, because, and when we're going through and considering our growth policy and our downtown plans, what they say about Lions Park, Coal Miners Parks, our parks in general, and overall goals. So, yeah, that's about as much update as I can do right now.
Yeah, so parks, uses of the parks or kinds of uses in the parks has never been something that's come before the planning board. Is that a change that you foresee happening?
So with the process that we're working on right now for the change of city land, I think that will be something that comes to planning board. And not so much for like conditional use permits, but just more so to make sure that it is along the same lines as zoning, and goals and intent. So again, it's very early stages, but I can see this coming in front of planning board, just for their recommendation with a presentation.
We've always kind of ignored it and just call it permitted across the board. But we had the incident with the observatory that the plan was approved by the city council, based on what was presented at the Parks Board and presented at that meeting. But then it went completely off the rails, and it wasn't what the plan was. So the plan doubled in size, and there was absolutely nothing. And so when I was looking at our permitted land use, I think we're gonna be putting some conditional uses in there, because we're going to do, like we do any other conditional use, consider traffic and parking and noise levels and lighting. Yep. And all of those things, which we've never been involved with, but I think that it's time to get involved.
Okay. I was just kind of wondering if that's duplicating some of the role of the Parks Board. I mean,
but they're just a Parks Board that gives the city council a recommendation, where this board has more teeth.
I mean, I think it's more so the fact that it would be a recommendation from both boards, but they both look at it with different lenses.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is the difference, is specifically Parks Board's gonna be looking at it for the recreation and the use of the space, but where planning board's gonna look at it more for a longevity standpoint, how it affects the zoning, what kind of regulations might be in place that might affect, again,
neighbors.
If you're putting in, the neighbors, if you're putting in parking spaces, if you have something for a high bug overlay or an urban renewal district overlay, how does that impact there? So again, I don't see it being a substantial, like, review process, but I do see it something where it'll come across the table and the planning board will have the opportunity to voice their opinion.
I mean, we do have the tennis courts going in. It's on city-owned land, so it's not a park. Okay, right, but it's a recreational facility. And again, we don't have anything in here, and somebody has to, and I'm sure that our recommendation will go far for the city council, because it is city-owned land. It's not like they're the ones that are applying for it. So somewhere down the line, we need to have a say in lighting and parking and noise and all of those things that we consider on any conditional use. So I think that we need to
And honestly, the process
consider
that we're looking at in land use and planning, we're using the conditional use permit and process as kind of an example that we're using for the application process within the city. So just how we're looking at it is essentially there's a bit of a flow chart where it starts as a letter of intent that goes to city council, and then from there, or first it'll go to city staff, which will then go to city council, and then city staff will then direct them to a certain application. There's going to be essentially a few scaled applications, whether it's a small change or whether it's a very large change. Those will have different criteria, obviously. I'm not going to make someone do an environmental impact study for a wood bench, but like there's gonna be other things that will require something along that nature. And then, again, essentially, during that application process, it's gonna ask for substantial criteria that can then be reviewed by all the different advisory committees, before, and then those recommendations can then go to council for final decisions. So then that way, when it comes to council, there's more teeth to it for the fact that it's been reviewed by not just planning board, parks board, but sustainability and other entities outside of the city.
A
So,
lot of eyes on it.
a lot of eyes on it and a lot of different lenses that have different expertise that can really help guide a decision versus just making one based off heartstrings.
All right, thanks. County?
We are still going through our planning or growth policy and working on subdivision. And we are not gonna meet in December, but we will go back to it in January. So, and our last meeting, I think we sent on 2 subdivisions for our approval to the county commissioner, so.
Possible approval, huh?
Mhm. Yep.
Is the city involved or with the county's growth policy, at least in terms of looking at the one mile urban expansion or future land use area?
They do provide notification, like if there's subdivisions in there for us to comment on, but that's statute, so.
Okay.
Do these 2 fall into that 1 mile buffer?
One's, north is Fox Elevator, and the other one is by, just off city, or what's the road?
Waterworks.
Waterworks, yeah, thank you.
And that's one that even though it's not within that mile, they still reached out to the city, because of proximity to our water source. And also, within those subdivisions, there was an initial request that they wanted to tap into our water system. We said no.
Mhm.
There was an additional twist to that they felt that a 100-year-old document that said there's a cabin up there that could have access to the water and not
Yeah.
be charged for it. And they thought that extended to if they subdivided it to all of the properties there. So not only did they want city water, they wanted city water for free. The answer to that was no. There was a couple of, there was a letter from an attorney and the city's position remained the same. We're not going there unless a judge tells us that's what we're doing. And then they came back and said, well, can we at least claim that we have access to the fire hydrant so that it meets our fire suppression needs? And we said, we don't have an issue with that. What we're going to be doing is there will be the equivalent of a hookup fee that allows them to meet that requirement. Because the alternative is they have to put in a 500,000 gallon tank or something rather to do that. And so the reality of the system is if something's on fire, the fire department's going to use the closest available resources, and this is probably within that full mile of town. They have a term they use called street miles or road miles, which is kind of the distance of if it's more than such and such a distance, you can do this, otherwise you have to have your own. And we anticipated this is probably a conversation that's going to come up more than once, and so what I think is going to be is the equivalent of a water hookup fee that gives you the ability to have access to the water system. And the reality is it documents it, it makes it contractual, but at the same time it puts something in place that we can do the same today, tomorrow, and 4 years from now, which is, as you know, one of our primary goals and objectives. So.
And any other communications from the mayor?
Yeah, so we closed on the O'Neill swap this week, and actually it was one of the additional documents that they were going to get to us to sign that I haven't seen, but I think it was actually recording today. This is that property up at the top of Brewery Hill. So just a reminder that that's one of those things that we have, that's currently slated as public as part of the airport. That was one of those that we had specifically requested that council had issued a formal request for for this board to decide, what's the highest and best use of that property. Is that additional park space? Is that land that can be used for subsidized housing? You know, some of those different choices. So I look forward to that. The other thing that will be of interest, is I suspect that we are going to see some potential annexation requests along the north side of the spires. And there's like 4 different properties kind of in line with the part that's been developed right now. But what's happening is they don't have access to put in sewer right now because of the land and stuff. It's really, really hard to get sanitarium approval within the county right now. And we've been advised by our planners that there's some level where, and I think the conversations that I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, had to do with water, about we have to make it available or whatnot. And so the approach that we're taking is, if you would like to tap into sewer, which is specifically what they're doing, then you're going to annex into the city. We're not going to have any more Remington ranches and 2-mile bridges where we're providing services and not getting the tax benefit of that. At this point in time, there is one owner who has a request, and the lot is yay wide, and the request was to put this much in, which kind of made the top of the border look like this. And the recommendation from our planners, and we said, yes, we agree, is it'll be a full band across of the property so that it's basically keeps that barrier straight. But while this is a single request, I anticipate there's probably 4 more coming. Probably means the equivalent of like 4 additional hookups. So a minimal load to our, but it'll go through regular annexation. It'll go through the Public Works Director talking about, you know, impact. We're finishing up that build-out study right now to kind of show where our spots are on zoning. So I anticipate that's something we'll see in the future. I don't have any sort of a timeline yet, but they've reached out and inquired about that. So I see that something coming in. And again, logic tells me that there's 3 other property owners we'll get similar requests from.
And how will our city zoning be applied as those properties get annexed?
That's, I think, as you annex it, that's what it'll be. My default reaction would be, and again, this would be ultimately a planning board recommendation, and then city council approves it, is how I understand the process would go. But I think it would be an extension of whatever's there. So if that's R2, R2 is now that much wider.
So
R3 PUD.
any property, it says somewhere in the zoning, any property comes in as,
With the adjacent?
I don't think it's the adjacent, it's just, like R1, I think. But sometimes it's like a condition of annexation, or as part of their annexation, they'll request to have it zoned as something else. So that would kind of be the planning board's role.
So will those, will there be a plat associated, like subdivision?
Yep.
How does, so you have a large parcel, is it gonna be just that large parcel, or is that gonna be subdivided into smaller lots? And when we look at annexation, are we gonna be looking at it from that context?
So it's probably 3 to 6 months from even getting to the city. They're going to do some stuff with the county as far as subdivision, exempt subdivision, and then they'll request annexation. And then if they do future subdivision or anything along those lines, they'll follow the city's process.
I guess what I'm saying is, if the county approves a subdivision plat that's not conforming to our adjacent zoning, what sort of complications does that play into? What I'm saying is, if they have to adhere to our city zoning from an annexation standpoint.
I think that's where that 1 mile notification probably comes into place, so they will at least reach out to us for input. And I think we have the option of providing feedback at that point in time. If there are ever any future plans to be annexed into the city, these are the fences. I think that would be where we would have that opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
So they're not gonna do what they do in the county without notifying us, because we know they have to notify us, it's within that 1 mile.
By the same token, if they apply for annexation into the city, we have to notify the county.
I don't know that that's true, but I don't see why we wouldn't either, if they're, because I think the annexation process is probably notifying both parties. You're not getting our tax dollars anymore, they are.
Mhm.
Is it just
But
because they want our
I
sewer?
don't think the county approves it at all. Does the county play a approval in an annexation?
And is it just because they want sewer, city sewer?
I believe that's what's driving the conversation, is they're having a hard time getting sewer within the county right now.
So the other question that comes to mind is, given that we still have a number of vacant parcels that are potential for development, do we even have the sewer capacity to take on annexation requests primarily from, just so they can get around the septic tank?
And that's why we're doing the build-out study right now, so we can answer that question with data rather than anecdotal information. So, because that is, the way the statute reads, if somebody requests it, you have to provide it to them unless you can provide documentation that you can't. Remember that it's at 1,000 feet, or it's some smaller number. Jeremy would know off the top of his head, but.
Oh, that's for
water.
them, if they're within 1,000 feet of a municipal or public sewer or water, they have to connect unless the cost is more than 3 to 1 or there's no capacity.
So like I said, there's an element that says we may have to do it anyway, well, let's at least get the revenue from it as well.
All right.
The other thing that I would add, just a little bit of a comment to your earlier question, was does this discussion on particularly the ice rink or the coal miners park, do those come in front of the planning board? And you're like, traditionally, these haven't come here. And that may be, well, what it is. I think the thought process is, I would rather present it in front of the planning board and have the planning board say, we don't have a role in this, don't drag us into this. It may be it may be as simple as, we find that it's in line with the growth policy, we find it's not in line with the growth policy, and they may say, that's the planner's job, let the planner do that. But what I have always been conscientious about is to avoid that opportunity where somebody comes back and says, this should have come to planning, and it doesn't. So what I would like to do is have it come to planning, and planning weigh in on, yes, we'd like input, or no, we don't need input, that doesn't require us. That's the plausible deniability in the paper trail that says we went and planning board deemed this was not in their wheelhouse. So I think, does that answer that kind of the part of that process a little bit better?
Yeah, it does. I just, thinking in the past, those kinds of decisions has been between the planning, or the Parks Board and City Council, and Planning Board hasn't really been a part of that conversation.
I'm just doing my best to cover the bases from day one. As soon as some of this stuff started breathing, it was like, I need to cover the bases to make sure that this is out there. It's very interesting to me that some of the feedback and comments we've gotten is, oh, you guys are putting this process in place so that somebody can change the use of and it's like, sit down and look at the details. What we're doing is throwing in obstacles to make sure that every equal protection is provided.
Creating red tape like confetti at this point.
So,
But that's
she
okay.
said creating red tape like confetti. But you frequently have folks who hear what they want to hear and dismiss anything else. So, like I said, I'm just covering the bases.
And just in terms of my world, in terms of land use and planning world, we'll probably be coming to planning board for their recommendations of what they would like to see within this process, and where they want to be involved and where they don't want to be involved. and also include what kind of criteria you want to have ahead of time for that review. So specifically what the planning board wants to be involved with and what doesn't make sense for them to be involved with. Again, we don't expect you to pick the, you know, this is the age group that will get to use it on a Sunday, like, that's
not planning.
that's not planning, but specifically like, oh, it's gonna need to meet certain design criteria and it needs to fit within our zoning regulations, essentially looking at it like a conditional use. Or is it something that you don't wanna deal with, and that's Brian's job, and if he flags it for planning board for a conditional use permit, then it comes here. So again, this is all very early stage. I'm literally making notes for it as we speak, so.
My theory was that with any building that we have, we consider things like parking and traffic and lighting and all of those things, and just because it's city-owned land, why should we not look at it?
Well, theoretically, you could find that it was already like this, and whenever it was done, it was considered approved. And that wouldn't, I would think that would put you in a position where you wouldn't necessarily have to revisit it. But then again, depending on the circumstances, you might.
Yeah.
And again, more so it's for something new.
Yeah.
And this goes for things beyond parks as well. This is just change of use in general.
Correct,
So.
in
again,
different
That,
zones.
that big piece of property up at the top of Brewery Hill.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't want that to say, okay, that's going to, I don't want to, as mayor, say, I think this is a lovely place for section 42 housing, make it so.
Right.
That's not the appropriate public
Right.
process to go through.
And that's a perfect, example of something that should go through the planning board,
Exactly.
Jeff?
even though it's city-owned land.
Mr. Chair?
Perry?
Yeah, I think something to consider is, you know, I guess the ice rink is an example, and the tennis courts up by Coal Miners Park. There's a level of, by doing what is proposed, it's a level of permanence that wasn't there before.
Exactly.
And once that's there, it's a lot harder to undo. And I think, you know, we need to give consideration, somewhere, there needs to be consideration of, you know, appropriateness, take some of what Sandy brought in, you know, parking, et cetera. You know.
Yes.
That's on?
I think that was a phone on somebody's desk.
No.
That makes sense.
We're good.
So yeah, the intent is just making sure that when something new is happening, that it's going through a very thorough process to understand it at the best, and then also make sure that it's the best and highest use.
Mhm.
And part of that is, again, in my eyes, having as many eyes on it as possible. Like, that's really it for me, is I want to
Yep.
make sure that we get to hear all the input
Yep.
before making a decision.
And like you said, everybody looks at it in a different light. We're
Yeah.
looking at it from our,
Correct.
our building type of,
Yep.
and
That-
zoning.
What's
Well,
informational?
I mean, the whole the old philosophy, I think, that created the north entrance is, well, we have room there, so that's fine, just put it there,
Right.
you know, and that's.
Yep.
I hadn't thought of that. That is awesome.
It's the basement of Red Lodge, the garage. It's like, I got some room out there.
I think you raised a good point, Andy and Chelsea, in terms of when you have a large proposal that's gonna increase capacity, it's gonna have an effect on traffic, parking, and lighting, that's, yeah, maybe it is a matter of degrees, and when you get to something where it's a major change in use, it's gonna impact those things as well as the neighborhood.
Correct.
Yeah, I can see where.
Why we're dragging you into it.
What's that?
Why we're dragging you into it.
Well, it's not dragging, it's just, you know, it's a change, and there, you know, it's adding another level. I hate to use the word, but I will, level of bureaucracy,
Yeah.
of review, you know, with, now you're adding gonna be 2 boards plus city council.
Oh, it's gonna be even more than just 2 boards.
Well, maybe, yeah, true.
Whatever it
So
takes.
again, just for the record, I personally hate bureaucracy and red tape, but here I am.
Yeah.
Because I think it's what's right, and I think it's, end of the day, it's better to be slow and thorough than to just push things through, because again, unintended, it all starts with good
ideas.
good intentions,
Yeah.
but end of the day, it's unintended consequences, so how can we avoid that at all costs?
And so this permitted land uses by district on the first page on non-residential uses, about the 5th or 6th one down is public parks and recreation. And we have permitted all the way across the board. And the parks are permitted, but then there's a line underneath it, recreational facilities, that we've left empty.
Yeah.
And so the recreational facilities is where I think that we're gonna need to put some conditional use.
Greg didn't bring it up.
We passed that before. This is going backwards. I know we don't ever wanna go backwards on this, but this is going backwards.
That's what I'm
So I think the recreational facilities would cover what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so when we get into the P1 and P2, we should definitely have a conditional use.
Yeah.
The question is, do the rest of them, do we want them in all of the commercial C1 through C4?
So, yeah. Like personally, the idea of putting like a roller rink or, you know, some sort of, I'm a
Downtown.
big fan of a climbing wall, like, again,
Yeah.
you're so polite with raising your hand, here I am just speaking.
Well,
Me too.
and I think
I can't
that
see
this
through
is
Greg.
this is another challenge for Greg. Are we talking about public or privately owned?
Right?
Or none.
That is a good question. for the
I don't think it
recreation.
matters.
I mean, no, I think everything should be permitted, but that's just me.
You're so easy.
Well, yeah, I think we've made the decision as we've moved through the table to that we're gonna have to come back and revisit some of those
Some of these anyway.
topics after we get into the actual
Definitions and-
zoning
Mhm.
things. So,
Well,
before we can go to that, we have a public comment period for items on the agenda. And the only thing on the agenda is, review of our zoning regulations update.
Hi.
If
feel like we're all
if you have comments, maybe come up and
Oh, should I? Okay.
yeah.
state.
That way,
It's hard to hear in the recordings otherwise.
Oh, I mean, okay, hi, Becky Dunn, again, feel like I live here now.
You're telling me.
It's nice to see you. I do appreciate the work that you're doing with, and I told you this privately, but I do think this is a good idea to try to, you know, have more stopgaps in the system and the process, and I appreciate that. Have you considered how many meetings this might be for the public to attend?
Oh, boatload.
Okay, just making sure. Because it's exhausting.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, in the urban renewal district, I'm glad I came and I get to make a little bit of a comment on this, because I've been looking through the cadastral at potential other places for the ice rink and potentially the sledding hill. And I thought, how cool would it be to have the sledding hill and the ice rink together there on that land, right next to Sam's Tap Room. People could leave the ice rink and go right there for dinner, and it would be great for Sam. So, not that I know what he's thinking, but, you know, I think it would be a fantastic opportunity. And I love the idea of a rock climbing wall. I think that would be great. Roller rink. What they've done in Columbus with their rec center, the civic center that they built on the other side of I-90, you drive underneath the overpass and it's there. It's like half indoor and then half covered rink space, what it looks like to me. And I think that would be a fantastic idea. We're already looking at spending quite a bit of money on this proposal for Lions Park. So if there is private funds that could be added to this, maybe that would be a great alternate location. And I think that you guys are doing great work. I'll be back for the other part.
Okay.
Is there any comments online?
anyone online?
Mr. Chair, I am not seeing, I I see John. I'm not seeing any of the audience raising a hand. Well, no, that's what I meant is that the public, I'm not seeing any comments online, either mics coming off mute, nothing in the chat window, no hands raised for public comment on the agenda.
All right, so we'll move on to, we'll move on to old business, which is to continue with our review of the zoning regulations. And I think we're still working on the table.
And we finished with freight and distribution, and I think we're looking at the word airport.
Hooray.
Second.
Yeah. I've given you full screen so that's as big as I can make it, so you have to do the rest.
Yep.
Or get closer.
What's the empty line?
That's where we took out the words freight and distribution. Kind of silly that we have airport in there, but
Yeah, I'm looking at
it's permitted.
it's old.
So,
So you can see what,
And I was kind of thinking on this the next one, rodeo and fairgrounds. Rodeo isn't in city limits.
Yeah.
They're privately owned. I don't know. I guess we still have zoning,
Yeah, but
zoning and fair. And do we need to split those up? Or,
the fairgrounds is no longer in city limits, I know. That's the annex.
So we have P1P and we have P1A. And,
and you want
I
to know
mean,
the difference?
not to be nitpicky, but,
be nitpicky.
well, I mean,
We should have
it's
P2.
permitted in P1, so which one, you know, so.
I'm both going to a book.
I can't remember if that was an overlay, P1A?
I think that's the airport, if I recall correctly.
Right, that's
Yeah.
that's the airport, yeah. I'm just wondering if we need to denote,
We don't even have P2 here as well.
we have, yeah, P2 is the far right column, but,
Oh, I just don't have it labeled.
P1A, is that, what's,
and there's plain P1 is
oh, I see,
is
yeah.
the
it's
bowling alley.
yeah, I think that's just on your zoning map. I
Yeah.
think your actual zoning districts are called P1 and P2.
Is it, okay, in the airport?
So, to
Yeah.
that point, if it's just on our zoning map, shouldn't we have that within our zoning code?
Well,
Or
Yeah.
do we have it out of our zoning?
we
map?
don't want to talk about the map right now because
No.
there are more than one issue with this map, to say the least.
Okay, we'll address it when we get to the map.
Okay.
Yeah. We have some work to do there, to say the least.
Ooh.
You said you're on airport then? Is that?
Well, we kind of passed airport to oh, I see what you're saying. You think that the airport is P1A?
That's what it is on the map, but, so it's permitted in P1,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just a labeling issue.
I don't think it's gonna move anywhere else.
Because
Like-
under P1 is also rodeo and fairgrounds
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and a whole bunch of other stuff.
So we could potentially move the fairgrounds up to Collier. Sorry, that was just me being a smart ass.
Yeah, don't even raise that.
Recognize, We
Just
rec-
saying, technically, it's permanent.
we recognize that. So why would it be approved in P1 and not P2?
I'm wondering, so we have rodeo and fairgrounds. Do we even need to have it? Do we have intention or feel like that might be coming within the city? Do you think that it's something that might come back to the city?
Yeah, both those were de-annexed. Maybe, was when Peter was here,
Yeah,
A while ago,
6 years ago, maybe.
at least,
can't remember.
6 or 8.
3 or 4 planners. Let's go.
Yeah, so it looks like the intent was P1 was for a mix of, public, semi-public uses,
So
that line with the growth policy.
actually, I think this document, it predates the de-annexation.
Yeah,
And honestly, I think we should leave it just because it is in our growth policy.
Yeah.
We have rodeo and fairgrounds in here. And that way,
so it's in P1 but not P2.
I don't even see P2.
Two is
This
school.
page.
Oh, is it schools?
Yep.
Well, it's public, park, recreation, and then accessory is storage, garage, building, shed. Conditional use is schools and government facilities. Where in P1, schools are approved as well. P1 includes a few things that P2 does not.
Yeah, it says the intent of P2 is provide land for schools, like that.
Number one,
The
as
main
opposed to
thing, yeah.
conditional, that's conditional either way.
Yeah, so like the only permitted use for P2 is public parks, so you don't develop the land. And then school, government buildings are the two conditional uses for P2. Whereas P1 is supposed to allow for a mix, so like if a hospital came in, or like a school could go in P1 if there's a good spot for it, but it's not, I guess, as reserved for a school.
I just had an epiphany on P1A. It's not P1A, it's P1.
Sure.
And the A is a completely separate designation for the airport
Airport.
overlay
Right.
that's there. So it's, it might have been better if it was P1 here and A here rather than a side-by-side.
Oh, I see what you see.
Yeah.
One of those colors over there.
okay, so,
Moving on.
So we're back to rodeo grounds and fairgrounds are permitted in P1 but not P2.
yep, because P2's for schools, that makes sense.
Yep. Government, buildings and facilities are P1, definitely. And conditional in P2. So those two are correct.
We also have.
Those are permitted.
I'm thinking, yeah, I'm looking at this. Conditional in R4 and conditional in C2. And permitted through C1.
North,
During north-south, C4.
north-south downtown. That's C4, so that's north-south downtown. C1 is a very small designation. And I think the reason why it's even here is because we have that building on Broadway. If you look for C1 on your map, I only see one. Do you see any other, Jeff?
C1 is the transition zone,
Oh, there's
Yeah.
one,
and that's.
right in the middle of
But
town.
it's
One
also
place.
all of this.
Which, so, it's permitted in here and there.
What is?
The government buildings and facilities.
Do we have any government buildings in C1 right now?
We do have the courthouse.
Not in C1.
Yeah, it's a little tiny square.
Oh, up here in the north, yep, okay, C1's up there. Sorry, I was looking at the map and I only saw C1 down.
And
in
it's my
the south.
understanding that when they finally develop where, Cedarwood is, that they are going to try to sell the courthouse.
Yes.
So that should be a thought in our zoning, whether or not we want to leave that there just 'cause that's where it is now.
I mean, more so, I don't have an issue.
Actually,
With it
the
being
courthouse
government.
is in C4.
Then what's the
The
C1?
C1 doesn't start until
No.
18th Street.
But no, there's one chunk that she's talking about up there in the north by 8th.
That
8th Street.
C1 is,
Yeah.
that's the library.
It's the library. Well, no, that's in P1. P1 is library,
P1
and then
is
across
library.
the street, so Wapom is
Oh,
in
yeah.
that C1.
I'm looking at, yeah, you're right, so it's across the street from the library.
That's weird.
That is, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
That's
it's
from
that
Moss-
same
it's
block.
Moss or the,
Yes, it's Wapom,
Mhm.
and then like a few residential
and
buildings.
then houses to the.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know that. We've
Yeah.
seen, every time we look at this, we see that one block on one side of the street that is a transition zone between commercial and residential.
And the people that live in the houses don't wanna go anywhere, so.
No,
Yeah.
and they don't want it to be commercial,
Uh-huh.
but it's commercial on one end. Yeah, that's something we'll have to look at later when we get into zoning.
Yeah, I don't think we should think about changing that.
Yeah,
That's been adamant
yeah.
from those folks living on that block.
More so, I was just gonna say, I don't think we need to have conditional use for, government buildings in C2. Why can't it just be allowed in C2? Why isn't it just permitted? I don't take offense to a government building or facility being within a commercial district.
Yeah, it's that stuff on Cooper and
Yeah, I mean,
north
if,
into Hagan.
You also
Yeah.
have a trigger of anything over 2,000 square feet triggers a conditional use independently of this.
yes, I don't see why that has to be conditional in C2. Again, C2, I don't see a lot of business entities or business buildings, or not business, but government buildings going in, but maybe facilities decides they want to put up a shop in one of the vacant lots in C2, and I'm fine with that, does that have to be a conditional use? As long as we have it to where it looks good?
You know how the county has that Quonset hut over on White?
White.
Yeah.
And if the government wanted to put one of those lovely Quonset huts over there on,
Cooper?
Hagan or Cooper, and
Again, that's where you get into, when you have your zoning, making it look aesthetically pleasing. It doesn't necessarily have to be conditional. That's just that's where I lean into that. I'm not gonna lose sleep over restricting where government goes. But,
Can we, I'm getting lost.
sorry, we're talking about government buildings, right?
and
So,
facilities.
Okay,
and just right now, it's conditional in C2, and I just think it could be permitted in C2. And same with P2.
So Chelsea's proposing changing this to a P,
Mm-hmm.
this to a P.
Yeah, and then I would honestly leave it out of R4.
yeah, I think you need to keep it conditional in C2, because that's a mixed residential and commercial
Mhm.
area, and again, the same issue we were talking about in terms of it's a government building, it's, dealing with parking and some of those other unintended issues, discussions, so that's just my thoughts anyway.
I'm happy with the way it is right now, conditional in R4, C2, and P2, and permitted in the rest.
Any other thoughts?
I just had a question, so you're talking about changing P2 to permitted instead of conditional?
I was just gonna say have it permitted across the board and out of R4. That was my recommendation.
Yeah.
Again, not the hill I'm gonna die on.
Yeah.
I don't really care all that. Just if you wanna make it conditional for the government to review itself, okay.
Well,
That
it's
just
not,
seems like a lot of time.
not
and
just the government, we're thinking about the adjacent neighbors and the impacts, traffic, those kinds of, any kind of commercial use within the C2, I think, depending on the scale, we need to think about those ancillary impacts.
And then again, I think we can think about that within our zoning. I don't think it necessarily has to go up for review. That's where my head is have those rules consistent for everybody, not just the government buildings and facilities.
Well, I'm looking at R4, because you were talking about taking it out of R4, and it's, the principal allowed use is single-family, short-term rental, daycare, assisted living, public parks and recreation, multifamily up to 4 units, and a group home.
Yeah.
So a government facility in that area strikes me as being unnecessary, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
The conditional use, they'd have to come up with a really good reason to have it there.
Yeah, and that's why I just say take it out, like, but that's just me personally.
What does everybody want to do?
So you're talking, taking out the conditional use for R4?
Yeah, I don't see why it needs to be in a high-density residential zone, even as a conditional use.
So take it out completely as non-permitted.
That's
Right.
my thought.
Okay?
Then everything else would be permitted.
Yep. That's my thought.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm looking at R4 and knowing that a lot of where we've gotten has to do with what was there. And I'm looking at the can anybody think of where there is government buildings or facilities that's in
R4,
an R4?
no, that's, I'm looking at it like,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
It doesn't make sense.
I think that Quonset hut is over there.
It's actually, and so the funny thing is most of the government buildings, you might see some isolated P1s. So like that Quonset hut is in a P1.
Yep.
There's a little chunk there in an R2 district. There's a little chunk up at the top where the water pumps are, at the top of Brewery Hill. I don't think there's
So
any,
we've got infrastructure stuff that's there,
yeah, but it's already planned for on P1. So like,
and that wouldn't include utilities like power substations or anything like that. There's a bunch of stuff, and then the C2 was the other one that was confusing to me, because C2 is basically east side of town from Seventh Street north in this kind of weird.
yeah, it's basically
A
the whole
weird
railroad.
That's actually where the old rail line used to run.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. Where Bonner used to be a road that went all the way down to essentially where Canaan is, but I'm looking at the old plats. But yeah, I mean, I don't see why it has to be conditional throughout C2, because again, C2 is just a weird zone that I think we've had a lot of discussion on. It's just weird. Like, so I say allow it, but within C2, I think we just really hammer home what things look like.
Yeah, I mean, you got,
Because again, you could have a government office down there, but as long as it fits the residential aesthetic, like, and we have those rules written in our zoning, there's no reason to create a process beyond that. Just make the rules clear.
So, in that case, within our zoning, we're gonna have a narrative that's gonna specify a minimum amount of parking that they're gonna have to have.
For a commercial space within a residential. And that's if you think that we, like, again, do we need to have, I think it also depends on the nature of that commercial, but again, I think parking, I worry about trying to force too much parking, and I have a whole thing on that, but we'll get there.
Well, that's the question, I guess, is the conditional use allows us to take a look at that and evaluate the effects. And given that the C2 is mixed commercial residential, there's some potential impacts that we should at least have the opportunity to take a look at. That's kind of where
I agree with you.
Yeah, and again, I'm not gonna lose sleep over it.
I'd rather look at
I
it.
just, yeah, I think it's better to have clear rules ahead of time, but
That's a good point. Yep.
It's hard to foresee something.
Yeah, and I
What-
guess I
What we
just-
foresee is one thing, and then when somebody comes in with something that we totally couldn't have imagined, that met all the rules that were written down, the conditional use gives us an opportunity to look at it and talk to the neighbors.
Yeah.
A conditional use permit means they have to let the neighbors know this is going in, and I think that's really important.
Mhm.
So I'm for leaving C2 and P2 as conditional use, but getting rid of the R4. That would be where I'd go.
Well, that's a good point about the informing the neighbors.
Yeah.
Rather than something just showing up next door to them
They start building.
and start building. And then we'll hear about it.
Oh, yeah. Well, the mayor will.
The mayor will. We won't. The council might.
Yeah, we will.
So let's take, do we have consensus that we'll take the conditional use away from C4 and make government buildings and facilities not a permitted use in R4? Is that,
Yes.
Yeah.
okay?
Okay, let's
Next
cross that
item we've
off.
been talking about is C2, is to either leave it as conditional use or permitted. Sue, what's your thoughts?
I couldn't hear all of it. Could you say again, which one?
The C2,
Mhm.
we've been talking about whether to change it from conditional use to permitted, so that government buildings would be permitted versus going through conditional use review.
I think that makes sense.
Permitted or conditional?
Permitted.
No.
Because, they're government buildings, they probably have a real good reason for wanting to go where they want to go.
What,
If they're government buildings, they should have a little bit of flexibility that others might not have. I mean, you've had, basically, the entire town has been financing them all this time, so.
Harry?
I think leave it conditional.
Conditional.
Martin?
Conditional.
Chelsea?
Yeah, permitted, but end of the day, again, not the hill I'm gonna die on.
That's
You're not
right.
gonna lose sleep on that?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lose sleep on it. I just, don't think that, I think that it's better to just have clear rules in the zoning.
Did you get that, Greg? So next on the list is art galleries.
I think that's fine all across the board.
Are you sure you don't wanna have that conditional in C2?
I should,
I mean, same, if we're gonna be consistent with it, like, that's where my head goes.
An art gallery is generally, going to be in a commercial area, so I'd just leave it permitted all the way across the board.
Yeah.
Pretty low impact
Mhm.
on a neighborhood.
So I've got, behind the scenes, you can't see it, but I've got, the working list that you and Al and I don't know who else, the spreadsheet,
Mhm.
and it actually crosses out art gallery across the board.
Because
So might,
Progress.
is there another,
Go ahead, John. I forgot that you're on.
I would just say, why isn't it retail? I mean, an art gallery is a retail store. I mean, they're selling.
art,
That's a good point.
Yeah,
yeah, that makes more sense.
And
Yep.
we actually went through this discussion before, but
Mm-hmm.
it's been many years now.
yeah. Yeah, I'm fine with removing it.
I'm fine with removing it.
Okay. And have it as part of our retail.
Considered retail.
Okay.
So I guess the only, and I'm not trying to make it stink, But the only thing I would say is the shop down here, the P Gallery, is that gonna be a retail space open to the public? Like, that's, I think the difference there is I could see art gallery not quite fitting within retail because there might be folks that aren't selling it to the public, not generally open to the public. That'd be the only.
Well, art gallery are we talking about an artist workspace, or are we talking about where the artist actually sell their works, but most.
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, I'm, like, would an art gallery, or would an artist workspace also just fit within, like, an office space? Like, that's kind of, I mean, I think it would. I just wanna make sure that that's posed, I guess, devil's advocate there.
Well, and they're also planning on a retail coffee shop and
Yeah.
probably a cafe.
Yeah, and like a catering facility.
And some other things in there, yeah.
Yeah, that was the only, you know, thing I was thinking of. It's just not necessarily every gallery's open to the public, but.
Did you get that, Greg?
Yep.
Chelsea's just making a fucking problem over here.
Again.
Everybody gets one, Chelsea.
I know, I got two today. I saved it. I didn't use a single one yesterday.
Commercial entertainment, that's her, rock climbing wall.
I would call that a recreational facility, but
You're gonna pay.
I think commercial entertainment, wouldn't that be like a movie theater?
How about an arcade?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, your definition
buddy.
in your current zoning is commercial business that provides entertainment to the general public and includes movie theater, musical and performance theater, bowling alley, skating rink, amusement, game arcade, and similar activities.
Cool. All the fun stuff. So not allowed, C1. Conditional, not allowed in C2. Permitted, yeah. Sure.
Should we, what do we do about P1 and P2?
I mean,
And
oh, yeah, I see what you're saying.
we already have a bowling alley in B1.
Mm-hmm.
Question is, should it be permitted or conditional? And this, the ice rink, if they charge, it's commercial. If they don't charge, it's not.
Or it's donation.
And I would advise that, to remember that this was, we've determined that this was built by what was there.
Instead of
Stuff
what
that's
we
already
want
there
Yep.
is
Yeah.
grandfathered in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't-
If it burns down, are they allowed to rebuild? I don't want to use that example and give anybody ideas. But
You say that every
if a
time.
new one comes in within that area, that's what you're defining.
Right.
So with this commercial entertainment, would that strictly adhere to private entity or
Yeah.
public?
I think commercial implies it's private.
Yeah. I don't see, even if you're charging for something, it's municipal, I don't necessarily consider that commercial in nature. Does that make sense? Because, I mean, that would be like saying just because we charge for city utilities, it's a commercial entity. Money doesn't necessarily make it commerce.
And we could have some mixed use in there anyway.
Yeah.
So if someone wanted to lease a space downtown in C1 and open an arcade with soft drinks, et cetera, to serve youth and young adults in Red Lodge, does that need to be a conditional use?
So I think it's specifically because of C1's location, and I just think C1 is a weird zoning anyway that could just be absorbed personally, but that's me. And I think it's because it is such a mixed use of residential and,
Yeah, that's a good point.
yeah.
Isn't C1 the courthouse?
No, it's not. We actually just went over that. It is Waupun, and then it is from 15th down to,
More south of town.
yeah, south
Well,
of
yeah,
town.
you would-
So it's Rocky Fork, it's Eagles Nest, places that could be park space.
That has to be.
But it's mostly residential and commercial mix. So you have like restaurants, but then you have private homes. It's kind of a funky churches, yeah.
Well, and it's that, you know, like that lot where the miners park to go to work, and
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
probably the only developable space there, so.
there's a couple of spots. There's that one house that got tore down not that long ago.
Well, then up towards Eagles Nest, yeah.
Yep, I mean, there's is Harry's place in there?
No,
He's on
So, yeah,
14.
maybe it should,
Harry's in C4.
maybe we should leave it conditional, just so we,
Well, that, yeah, I mean, that's
We're gonna come
why.
back and
that's why,
It's
yeah,
the, it's
that makes
the
sense.
large number, it's a larger proportion of residential uses compared to commercial uses within
Yep.
those two areas.
Yeah.
That's, and when you think about it, if you're gonna put it into, say, the C4, all of a sudden now you're going from 10 and 20-foot setbacks to 0 setbacks.
Setback.
So that completely changes the character of
Of the area.
that area.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking, you know, down Eagles Nest, it's very limited to what, that area there between there where the Rocky Fork was, it's very limited to what it could be utilized for. It could be a putting, you know, a putt-putt or, you know, miniature golf or something, but, you know, because that's a different type of facility, but,
But again, you think about the lupine, if that were to go away, I guess that's actually a different zone, that's C3 South,
we're gonna get to that one.
yeah.
You know,
But, yeah, I
But-
just think about that area and developing some of the, again, the house burns down, what could you do? Like, that's the thing, is, there's just, it's like that now, what do we want it to be?
all of these uses are based on a current zoning,
Right,
which is a danger, because once we
Yeah.
actually get into our zones and we look again and maybe redraw the zoning, we'll have to go back to this table
yep.
I'm fine with that.
and go through it again.
Let's do it.
Actions have consequences.
Yes,
Yeah.
they do.
You did, in that same spreadsheet, you added C2 as a conditional use for commercial.
What was that, Greg?
For this one, on
For
C2,
commercial?
you added it as a conditional use.
In C2,
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I think that's fine.
Yep,
So we have conditional in C1 and C2, and permitted in, C3, north, south, and C4.
So really what I'm seeing with C1, C2 is it's a really mixed
It is.
residential space. I mean, so, I don't know, it just makes
It
me
depends
wonder
on
if
what
it
it
should
is.
just be an M instead of
What does M stand for?
Mixed. Mixed bag.
Or RC.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in other municipalities, they do like CMU, commercial mixed use, to kind of break up their strictly commercial, strictly
Yeah.
residential. Makes it a little more obvious to the,
Yeah, I think that would, I mean, because again, it's kind of taken me a second, like it's a C, so it makes me immediately think commercial use should be allowed but then it's like, okay, when you actually look at the concept of it, it's like, oh, it's because it's private, and again, a lot of this is a majority residential space. And again, I go back and forth to where I don't necessarily care what goes on inside of the space as long as the exterior is being handled the same way. And so again, I still am a firm believer that let's just make the rules within that area and that zone clear within the zoning and making fewer commercial conditional use permits. But
So we have permitted I'm just looking at C3N in terms of what we have for permitted uses and versus conditional, commercial entertainment. Okay. I guess the thing that came to mind a little bit was when you mentioned a movie theater. all of a sudden, the scale of that comes to mind in terms of impacts, again, parking, lighting,
Noise.
without any sort of sideboards put on, I mean, so I'm just kind of wondering if that commercial category isn't a little bit too broad.
And
Where's
how
the
many of those
drive-in
are
go?
Independently though by 2,000.
What's that?
Remember, you have a separate and independent, anything over 2,000 feet. So if it's less than 2,000 feet, how likely is it to have
A huge impact.
those impacts?
How about a drive-in? The building itself isn't over 2,000 square feet.
Well, then it's all happening on the lot, so you have plenty of parking provided.
Parking isn't an issue,
Well, again, that's where you can have those additional rules built in.
but there is a lot of pavement.
Okay.
That's a good
It's on
point, that
someone's
we have
private
that
lot.
2,000 square foot trigger.
Yeah.
Which I think Jeremy's gonna have some discussion when we get there
Okay,
on whether or not that should necessarily trigger conditional use, just because like you're approving the use, not really the building or the expansion itself. Like if they're adding a use or changing the use, they have to come to us anyways. But if it's a new building, it's gonna be used for a use, so the use should either be conditional or not. It shouldn't necessarily be triggered by a
size.
square footage.
But don't we have design review in addition to conditional use? So we do have the ability to review the design?
Yeah, you could probably trigger design review with 2,000 square feet, but triggering a conditional use permit.
You're saying just because we have it now, that maybe a recommendation is coming that that's not wise to do?
Yeah, Jeremy can expand on it more when we get there in the zoning regs, but, that, I wouldn't bank on it too much for triggering conditional use. I think he's got different opinion for design review.
Yeah, I'd definitely like to get a little bit more discussion on conditional use versus permitted and what that to address what Chelsea's ideas are bringing forward versus what we've traditionally been thinking of, and if we need to kind of have get a different perspective.
Which the other thing to, I guess, note would be, like even permitted uses have to meet your parking standards.
Yeah.
So it would be a matter of looking into beefing up your parking standards.
Yeah.
If you're gonna include, movie theater as a permitted use. Because Brian or us will review, make sure they provide enough.
And yeah, I think that's the big thing for me is, we have the standards within the zoning that
So,
let's create less work for, again, the owners, the planning board and the planners, and build the groundwork now, and then that way have those sideboards that are in place where, and it also just helps, I mean, even if you are a neighbor, you can make that it creates an expectation for them too, to where, as opposed to having it be a conditional use and now it falls on the planning board and the neighbor's pissed because you let them do something that fits within that conditional use, they can come in and see the zoning code and say like, oh no, this is something that I can expect to potentially happen. And not saying they're going to, because we get it, like, people don't do that, but that's my 2 cents.
Great. I guess, can we move on?
Mhm.
Do you have any other things that were on our list? I don't have those in front of me, so.
Yeah, I'm looking at them in the background.
Okay.
Maybe highlight them.
Yeah, I guess we keep moving through this, I'll keep checking them and then,
Okay.
yeah.
I was wondering if commercial entertainment,
What'd you say, Sandy?
I was wondering where a dance studio or the martial arts studio or a school, gymnastics school, where those would fall under the categories we currently have.
Recreational.
It's kind of a school of dance and martial arts, and I was trying to figure out what we have already and where that falls.
Classrooms? Because, I mean, that's kind of, because you can teach classes, So Clay Center would kind of fall into that same category.
But they have retail,
They have retail, but I mean,
Yes,
a
they
yoga
have-
studio could be selling,
all by, right, yeah, a yoga studio would, to me, the same as a dance studio or martial arts studio. I don't know where it falls under all of our list here. Obviously, we're not gonna be able to hit everything, but they're gonna say, look, I wanna do it, what do I have to do, where can I do it?
And I think that's almost, that's something we've got to look at, because if you say dance and you say martial arts, but you don't say yoga, when that comes in, we've had those situations, and specifically one of the things that was, they were looking for places to put the food bank. Guess what? We don't describe food bank in here. So how do you address and like?
Yeah, that's a good question.
How do you make your buckets big enough that it includes the things that we haven't?
That we haven't thought of,
Because like I said, a food bank, nope, can't have one in Red Lodge.
because it's not on the list.
well, and again, I think that that's why I think the table's hard, because instead of the very specific uses, and we've had this conversation with storage and all of that, I think it's more so you have the criteria of things that you are allowed to do within that space, but I think it's more so things you're not allowed to do within that space, and then whatever else. Like, it's really, we don't want you to be too loud, we don't want you to take too much parking, and we want you to only operate during X hours. And don't go too tall and make your building pretty. And
We're done.
otherwise, like,
A two-page zoning.
I mean, otherwise, like, okay, so you have a restaurant, you know, okay, so noxious smell, so it's the don'ts, like, what don't we want in that space? That's kind of the cap on it, versus, like, I don't care if someone's painting or if they're dancing, as long as their building looks good and they're not creating public health and safety issues, right? Like, I don't know, sorry, I'm going on a tangent, I can tell it's dinner time.
That it's been a long day.
It's been a long day,
I guess to answer your question, Dave, a little bit, is food bank is, to me, is like a warehouse, right?
it's also
It's
like
primarily storing
And
food.
do we have where, but like I said, there's, to me, there's got to be some sort of verbiage or and like, or and similar,
Right.
or something that we include in here. Because I know that was, and it might have been that was what, one of the positions they were looking at was in kind of a resident, and it might have been, it wouldn't have been a problem in a commercial, or it wouldn't have been in a, but we've got to have some sort of language that says and similar, because I know that when we came in and I reached out to the planners about it, like, you don't have that defined anywhere.
No, to what you're saying, you know, we have a dance studio downtown, we have a martial arts academy downtown. And again, we're not supposed to be looking at what we have, we're supposed to be looking at what would we like for the future.
What
And if we're trying
would we
to,
like to permit?
if we're trying to maximize, you know, resort tax revenue, you know, in the commercial district that we've raised an overlay for downtown, then I would think we would want to encourage businesses that are there to ring the till, you know, to bring in revenue, more so than what you will from a dance studio or a martial arts studio. And they're not free. I mean, they're not operating for free, but I think we do need to define, you know, I'm agreeing better where we'd like to see those types of, and, you know, when we were talking about C3 North and the, you know, our concept earlier, and everybody's like, well, we don't want retail there. But, you know, if we're trying to shift things, that's exactly the type of businesses we'd like to see in the North End.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And, you know, right now we have martial arts in the Roosevelt Center too, and that's something we have to kind of keep in mind as we're looking at this, is we have a space there that does all kinds of things.
Yep.
We don't want to put them in a bind by suddenly ruling out something that they're already doing by not taking it into consideration when we're looking at the zoning in that area.
Well, they're grandfathered in, so
Well, kind of.
Well, I mean, the building's grandfathered in. What they do in the building is
Great.
ill-defined.
Yeah, so I think on Dave's point, I think it's written in a way already, or it will be. But basically, you wanna cover like what you can think of, but you don't wanna try to cover everything under the sun. And that's part of planning staff's job, is to make that determination if there is a like use or not. And then from there, the applicants, if it's not, technically they have to amend the zoning regs to add it. But they're allowed to appeal, which would come to, I think, the city council.
City council is the board of appeals, so.
So everyone can have their own interpretation, and then from there it goes where it goes, but I think if you start trying to cover every use, like Chelsea said, your zoning regs double in length. And yeah, I guess we see and we review enough of them, and planning staff should, to where you can interpret what the intent was with commercial entertainment.
So, just a hypothetical, we have a building that's being used on Broadway as a dance studio. And I don't know what it was before, but I know somewhere along the lines that there's a change of use which impacts the occupancy level of the space. In other words, I couldn't just take one of the buildings downtown and decide to change it to well, I'll give you a good example, where Bone Daddy's is. Yeah, it used to be it's not there right now, but it used to be a garage and shop, and they wanted to make it into a public venue. But they didn't want to come before anybody in order to do that.
Don't blame them.
Well, I mean, that's where they got
Yeah.
crossways, and that's why they ended up having to put in the sprinkler system, because they were going from a low impact, low traffic, low number of people to something that could potentially have 200
Sure.
people inside, so.
Which I don't think the zoning regs, they don't talk about occupancy at all or anything. I think that's a
That'd be.
building or state
Fire.
level permit, fire code.
Yeah, it's definitely
So our
fire
change of
code
use is
related.
not something that goes through, that the zoning is a guiding document on?
Change of use it would, but it wouldn't necessarily be related to occupancy. It'd be if they change to a condition.
Well, I'm strictly talking about change of use, and that's why change of use actually comes into play, is because of primarily occupancy in fire code.
So if you get a restaurant and then it turned into a florist, your occupancy goes way down. Would you have to go through a change of use, like through the city, or like, probably not?
As long as it was, see, that's one of the things that would go in front of Brian.
Yeah.
And he'd look at it and make that, but if you're going the other way around,
Right,
it's been a flower shop and you want to make it into a restaurant that's gonna have
yeah,
seating for 50, then you're gonna have to, it goes in, it's in part of the building code.
right, so again, I guess more so, do we need to worry about that?
I
I
think
don't
it's
think
building code.
Yeah, it's building
It's
code,
building code.
building and fire and stuff
As
that's
long
outside
as,
of our.
as long as the florist is retail and the restaurant is permitted in that zone, it doesn't come to us.
Permitted,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's past us.
yeah.
So that's why I think we have to think at that level, what possibilities, not get into the weeds of.
Yeah, I think, with the CUP we just did, the bistro,
Mm-hmm.
that would be a good example of a change of use.
Right.
So they were doing whatever they need to do with public works and fire,
Mm-hmm.
but you guys were just looking at
They were going from retail to casino.
to conditional use.
Yeah.
So if they would have already been approved for a casino, you wouldn't have seen it.
We wouldn't have seen it at all. We still haven't seen it.
It's doing all work though.
So where are we?
Well, our last was commercial entertainment, then we're
We're
down
on hotels and.
hotel, motel, lodging.
Holiday Inn?
Did we get to the part where we got rid of one-story bungalows in the middle of the commercial district yet, or did I miss one of those, or is that still?
No, we're intentionally leaving that in there just to piss you off.
What?
I think
we'll have to come back to that one. That's not the line we're talking about right now.
I just, and I missed one, so I didn't know if I missed it.
I,
We have a blank spot,
I
we can
did
throw it in there.
I did a question mark on first floor residences in the C4.
Yeah.
That's same thing, yeah.
Yeah. So I put a question mark there, but I put it at the end of the list that we
Right.
currently have.
And again, I don't think that's gonna be something that ends up in a chart, I think it's gonna be something where we define that more clearly within C4, like the actual definitions, if that makes sense.
It's gonna be one of those
Again,
dots.
our chart isn't the no's, it's the yeses. And then the no's will come from when we are actually writing out the definitions of what's what's happening within that space and how you're allowed to use those spaces.
Can't live at ground level on Broadway.
I mean, I don't necessarily, yeah.
So we're on hotel, motel, lodging.
Yep,
Thank you, Jeff.
with,
So we're,
C1 conditional and permitted in C3 north, south, and downtown. I don't see a problem with that.
okay, any disagreement?
That's great.
I don't know, I think, someone had to bring it up about first floor residence.
Right,
Well, that would be,
That's it for me.
we knew that was coming.
Well, I know there's a plan afoot to make a certain, building on Broadway, located at 14th and Broadway into a boutique hotel
Oh,
and possible residence, but I think the residence isn't on the main floor, it's on the top floor.
yeah, I can't imagine that they would just wanna go single level on that.
No,
They're
it's a
not gonna make any
three-story.
money on it.
Excellent.
But I think right, as it stands right now, none of us would know that because it's a permitted use, so.
And again, I think that makes sense. I don't know if that would be something I'd need to see conditional as permitted, and I feel good about that.
It
being
is
permitted.
still be conditional now because it's more than 2,000 feet.
Well, that's true, it's more than
That's up to
2,000
change.
square feet,
Sure.
yeah.
Which is why we have that in there.
Right.
Sorry. Which is exactly why we have it in there.
so I kind of sense no changes on hotel, motel, lodging.
No, it's,
Conditional in C1?
No,
it is conditional in C1.
I said why, what's the,
Again, it's that residential mixed area.
it's not necessarily the, C1 that's south of town. It's really that one block with La Palmita.
And even that C1 south of town, I can see where, again, there you do want to have that conditional review of, does it fit
The
with
residential,
that aesthetic, that
Impact.
that impact to the neighbors?
but
It's
the
the
thing
thing,
about the guidelines that we actually get to say no also. There's, the conditional uses, it's really hard, you've got to have a legally justifiable. I'm gonna look to you to jump in here.
reason to turn it down.
yeah.
Mhm.
And I think it's not so much the turn it down, it's the provide provisions. I think that's the difference. Because again, I don't necessarily see it that you want to turn down the motel at the front end of the Eagles Nest where you can build. It's that you want it to look good and not be the Eagles Nest. Or,
And not even have that name.
or, if, for instance, again, Lupine is in that
Well, I
space.
just think this is a lupine question here,
It's
so.
Lupine, it's the, and actually, no, that's C3 South. I keep doing that because it's a weird tail end of that.
But I guess going back to, those are existing uses.
Right.
So we wouldn't even, the only reason we would see anything relative to the Lupin or,
Eagles Nest.
not the Eagle's Nest, the other one,
Oh, that little,
The Red Lodge Inn,
no,
No, it's further south.
Irish Rip,
Chateau?
no, the,
Well, guess,
Beartooth Hideaway.
No, the new one that's,
no, it's not the new one, it's there, it's
The
the
old one.
historic one.
Yeah,
oh, is it where Shenta lives?
It's,
Kind
gosh,
of a-
what's the name?
it's 15th and Broadway, is that the one?
No, it's,
Cause that used to be a hotel.
I'm really enjoying this guessing game. Can I say no? Right? Yeah, get in here.
Save us.
anyway,
Talking about
my
the
point
old
was,
one.
those are existing uses, so the only time we would change it is somebody came in and wanted to tear down those buildings and
Right.
change the use.
So I
Yeah.
guess more so, just looking at C1, the space, if, the Roosevelt Center, they decide to shut their doors and someone bought it and wanted to turn it into a hotel, that would become a conditional use to making sure. So, does that fit the example for you? Okay, cool. That being said, that'd be sweet.
Mr. Chair, just as a point of order, I want to call out that it's quarter after, and I anticipate you've got some public as a point of order, it's quarter after. I know you like to be done by 7:30, and I anticipate you have some public comment.
Okay.
Oh,
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
so let's, where were we? So retail is next on the list, I guess.
Yes, that's what I marked it. Are we quitting F?
At retail? We'll
At
come back
retail.
to retail
We'll
next
come
time?
back to retail, yeah.
We are
We're-
not zipping along.
No,
No, we need to
you're
speed things up a little.
sorry. That's
Perhaps.
on me.
No, it's some good discussion,
14.
some of these things are worth
Going
hashing out,
over.
and we'll hash them out again, probably, so.
It's our
Okay,
job.
Yeah, I'd rather take my time.
so are we okay with that? We'll pick up, I guess, after the first year with retail.
Sounds good.
January 14th.
I'll
Okay.
prepare myself.
So back to the agenda. Public comment on items not on the agenda. Is there anybody that would like to come up, state your name, where you live, and try to keep your comments to 3 minutes?
Hi, Becky Van Horn, Carbon County Preservation Officer. I think yoga studio, dance studio, maybe under public enrichment? The thought?
I thought about schools even.
Yeah. It's nice that they're in walking distance
Mhm.
in town. Anyway, so I have here a letter, that we have drafted from the Carbon County Historic Preservation Commission, regarding the proposed ice rink in, hopefully in preparation that you guys may or may not see this come across your desk. So the Carbon County Historic Preservation Commission members have discussed the proposed project for the Red Lodge Ice Rink located at Lions Park. This historic public park is adjacent to the to the High Bug Historic District and the Red Lodge Commercial Historic District. Kate Hampton, Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer and Community Preservation Coordinator of the Montana Historical Society, confirmed that the park is eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. The Carbon County Historic Preservation Officer and the Historic Preservation Commission would like additional information in order to ascertain the impact the project may have on the integrity of the historic resource. It is the position of the Carbon County Historic Preservation Commission that the historical integrity of Lions Park may be diminished by the introduction of any large permanent structures. Attached to this letter is a copy of the 1901 Sanborn plat map showing that this area has been a public space since the early 1900s and therefore is a historic green space. Sincerely, Rebecca Van Horn. That's me. All right, and then here is also the letter from Kate Hampton. Dear Becky, thank you for your inquiry regarding Lions Park and Red Lodge. The property has historic associations with the city's residential, recreational, and civic development and retains sufficient integrity to convey its significance. The park is eligible for listing on the National Register of the Historic Places. When considering a property's National Register eligibility, the evaluation includes not only significance, but also whether the place retains sufficient integrity to convey that significance. Under the National Register guidelines, there are 7 aspects of integrity: location, setting, design, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association. For a landscape property like a park, integrity of design, setting, feeling, and association are particularly important. Several non-historic structures appear in the historic park. The introduction of additional structures has the potential to diminish the park's ability to convey its historic associations and could render it ineligible for listing. As you know, National Register property owners manage their properties as they see fit. Under federal law, the listing of a property on the National Register places no restriction on what a non-federal owner may do with their property up to and including destruction, unless the property is involved in a project that receives federal assistance, usually funding or licensing/permitting. At the state and federal levels, listing and eligibility do not impact an owner's right to use, alter, or demolish their properties. The State Historic Preservation Officer has no jurisdiction to influence local decision-making processes. Thank you, and please let me know if you would like additional information about the National Register evaluation. So,
And if you would like to leave copies of those with our planner, then those can be included in the minutes.
yes, absolutely. And so here is the Sanborn map. Some of you have already seen it, some of you have not. Also here in this packet is the newspaper article from 1927. In the same article that it shows the land being given to the city by the Northern Pacific Railroad, the ascertainment. It also talks about OHP Shelley resigning from public council here in order to go to Washington, D.C. to petition for the road, for which she went 16 times by train, which is very impressive. And there's the article itself. High Bug Considered Top Area is the headline of this one, where the This Old House publication listed it in 51 best old house neighborhoods. So that's very interesting as well. So if you guys would read that as well as the dedication of the park from 2007 and the resolution from 2017 as well. So that is there for you to have. And then, I'm sure I'm over my 3 minutes, but here is a copy of all the lists and all the letters that have been received, including comments on the Preserve Lions Park in Red Lodge petition comments that have been updated, as well as the comments that have been left on our landing page, redlodgelionspark.com, where people have expressed their concerns. So please take some time to look at these. I know not all of them are addressed directly to Planning Board, but we have presented them. So we would like for you guys to read them and understand people's opinions and thoughts on this park.
Out of curiosity, did you say that the park wasn't dedicated till 2007?
So there is a dedication there in the park. I don't know exactly when it was dedicated as a park by the city, per se, but I would like everyone to remember that at one point Red Lodge was owned by the Rocky Fork Improvement Company, the Northern Pacific Railroad subsidiary. So that was a public park in 1901. When it was dedicated, I'm not entirely sure.
I thought you said it was dedicated.
It's probably in our parks plan, the master plan.
Yeah.
From, I can't remember who it was that mentioned it the other day at another meeting, but
In
it does sound
2007?
like there's all of the dedications and what they're dedicated for within our parks plan. So that'd be interesting to see.
It seems to me that the gazebo,
That's, I think the gazebo went in 2007.
Right.
and perhaps that's,
Yeah.
Those are both of the
Thank you.
recording documents. Yes, absolutely. And I also went to the county clerk's office and acquired some of the deed records for the property as well. I haven't gotten a full day to look them over, but I will be happy to share those with you because they are in a collected source. So we can fully look at when the land was transferred over to the city. Anyway, we appreciate you guys taking a look at this matter. If you are interested in putting it on the National Register of Historic Places, if you plan on developing in the future, you won't be able to do it in the future. It would have to be done before those developments are done. I actually have a group of people who would be willing to pay for the dedication on the, putting it on the National Register of Historic Places, and we'd be happy to also look at putting that on for Pride Park as well. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I can send you guys an email.
Okay.
Just let me know what I think, so I won't waste your time, or
And
waste any more minutes.
you'll keep a master copy, but maybe make a copy and distribute to the board members?
yeah.
That's what we just said, is we'll make a copy and they'll scan it out with everybody, and then there'll be a copy included in the minutes.
And does this come back to you, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there anybody online that,
I see folks online. Is there anybody online who would like to make public comment, either turn on your camera, raise a hand, unmute. Mr. Chair, I am seeing no response online.
All right. Written correspondence, staff communication updates.
We've got no upcoming applications, the potential annexation, potential subdivision, a lot of 3 to 6 month stuff, so.
Okay. All right. I guess we'll quit.
Oh, no, 5
early.
minutes.
All right.
Thank you.
When's your next meeting?